Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to join you again for this afternoon's session. I'm joined by Rick Tyler, who's going to help me through the presentation here today. I'm delighted to be back with all of you. And Stephen, thank you very much for the introduction and helping to set up the day as well. I'm going to walk through a presentation with you over the course of the next about 45 minutes on the real nature of politics and elections. And then Rick is going to talk to you about some communications techniques, and then Steve Sutton will close up the afternoon with a further examination of some communications techniques that you can use. So next, please. So we're here to talk about how to maximize our opportunities for future victory. And that is that there are no guarantees in politics. Politics is a realm where you can do all of the right things and still lose. And that happens very frequently. And likewise, you can have a campaign where you make many mistakes, but you run against a weak opponent and you wind up succeeding. So there are no guarantees in politics. Instead, what we can do is try to maximize our opportunities for future victory. To put it another way, well-prepared people have better luck than people who are not well-prepared. Next. But first, I want to get to the most important question in politics. In order to get there, we're going to have to unlearn some of the things which we learn from social media. And so let me start with a story. Next slide, please. My parents were not born in the United States. I live in California. I live in a small town in California called San Diego. You might have heard of it. But I live in San Diego. I've lived in California for 20 years, but I grew up in New York. But my parents were not born in America. My parents were born in Nazi Germany. My father was born in 1934. My mother was born in 1941 in Niedersachsen, up near the North Sea. And they did not come from any wealth at all. In fact, they both grew up very poor, and they had no more than an 8th grade education. And in 1936, my mother's father bought a bicycle that looks just like the one that you see on the screen. So my grandfather bought this bicycle in 1936, and this is how he got around his entire life. He never owned a car, he never owned a horse. This is how my grandfather got around his entire life until he died at age 91. Next. My father, in 1968, bought a Volkswagen that looked just like this, although I don't think it was ever this clean or shiny. But my father, who was born in 1934, this is how he got around for a good portion of his life. In the 1960s and 70s and 80s, he was driving this Volkswagen that looked just like this. Next, please. And this is how I get around. And next. And the reason I show these 3 pictures is to illustrate a very important point. Take a look at the difference in life expectancy between someone who was born in 1910, who was only expected to live 47 years, to someone who was born just 24 years later, who had a life expectancy of 58 years. My father lived until 62. And I was born in 1970, so I can harass and annoy communists and socialists for about another 30 years or 20 years before my time is up. But look at the difference between 2 people who were born 60 years apart, have such a difference, not only in life expectancy, but in their quality of life as well. And the reason I bring this to light is that this has never happened before in all of human history. In all of human history, in the span of such a short period of time, you have never had such a dramatic change in how people live, in how easy it is to get food, their accessibility to health care and medical care, and how long they live. Never before has this happened before. If you lived in the 7th century or you live in the 8th century, your life was probably the same. Your life was going to be the same as your parents, and your children would live the same as you. And for most of human history, this was the case. But now we see a dramatic difference. A dramatic change in the last 100 years. You will live longer than your parents. Your parents lived longer than their grandparents. But prior to that, life pretty much remained the same. And so it begs the question, next, it begs this question. What is it that is allowing our children to live better than us? What has changed in society that is allowing people to live better and to live longer? It's an important question because whatever that is, we want to produce more of that, right? So some people might say, well, we're smarter than those people who came before us. We're smarter, people have gotten more intelligent over time. Although, if you really believe that, if you really believe that we're smarter than the people who came before us, take a look at your Facebook feed and tell me whether you think that's true. If I look at my Facebook feed, it suggests the opposite, right? That people have gotten dumber and not smarter. But there were plenty of smart people who came before us. I've put a couple of pictures of them up on the screen. Leonardo da Vinci, for example, or William Shakespeare or James Madison. There are plenty of people, Plato, Socrates, plenty of smart people came before us. There's no evidence to suggest that people have gotten more intelligent than those people who came before. So that's not it. It's not that people are smarter. That's not why we're living longer. Next. In fact, what allows one generation to live better than the next is innovation. This is what allows us to improve. It's not that people have gotten more intelligent. It's that we have better tools than those people who came before us. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that in just a moment. But we are able to do more and live better and have better health care and eat better and so on because we have access to better tools. It's not that we're smarter. It's not that we're more capable, but we have better tools. And we get better tools by innovating. Well, what gives us innovation? There are two components of that. The first is education. Education is essential to innovation because without that, we keep reinventing the wheel, right? Education is what allows us to stand on the shoulders of those people who came before us. But education is not enough. If education were enough, the Soviet Union would still be around today. The Soviet Union was cranking out engineers and computer scientists like they were going out of style. Education is not enough. There's a second component that allows innovation to take place, and that is opportunity. Education and opportunity together are what allows innovation to take place. Without those two things, you don't get it. Innovation doesn't happen without opportunity. So I'll give you an example of how this works. This is a picture of a garbage truck. It comes by my house every Thursday morning and it picks my trash up. The truck pulls up. There's only one driver. An arm comes out, puts the trash in the truck, and it moves on to the next. This truck requires one person to operate it. But when I was growing up in the 1970s and the garbage truck came by, this truck didn't exist. And instead, it took 3 people to pick my trash up. One person who drove the truck and then 2 people who hung on the back of the truck, and they would stop and they would have to physically lift the can into the back of the truck and so on. So now we can do with one person what used to take 3. And that means that 2 other people are free to do other things. My favorite example is this. This is a newspaper ad for a company that doesn't exist anymore called Radio Shack. And this is from the 1990s where you could see that you could buy at this store a computer, a cell phone, a telephone, a tape recorder, a calculator, a CD player, headphones, a clock radio, speakers, a video recorder, all of those things. And if you were to buy everything in this ad, at that time, it would cost you $3,277 if you bought all of it, right? Could you imagine the look on your spouse's face when you came home with all this junk, right? $3,277, or click. In today's dollars, to buy all of this would cost you $6,500. Or you could buy this for $399. This device can do every single thing that all of the devices in that ad can do, and it fits in your pocket. And it costs 6% of what it would have cost you to buy all that stuff at that time. That is how much things have changed. This is a tool that you all have, and it's not the only tool that we have. But the fact is, click, that you have in your pocket with your phone millions of times more computing power than it took to put men on the moon with Apollo 11 in 1969. You have millions of times more computing power than all of NASA had at that time. And all of us have access to that. All of us have access to that type of a tool to do what it is that we want. Never have we seen that type of thing happen before in all of human history. The power of the tools that all of us possess. Now, on a related point, I want to bring up the following screen, and that is that the Heritage Foundation, which is an American think tank, has ranked every country on the planet by how much economic freedom is in that country. And they've scored every country on earth in 4 categories, and you can see them on the screen. The rule of law, how big the government is, how efficient the regulatory markets are, and whether you have the freedom to trade and to invest, and so on. What the markets, the amount of freedom that you have in the markets. Under rule of law, you have things like property rights, government integrity, that is freedom from corruption. Do the courts work effectively? By the way, this question on the courts is really, really important to investment. For example, if I buy a piece of land here and I build a factory, and then after I've built the factory, someone comes along and waves a piece of paper and says, oh, no, 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 you built that factory on my land. And then it goes to court. If it takes 30 years to resolve that, then what happens? Other investors look and say, well, we're not going to build a factory there because someone else could come along and wave a piece of paper in our face. By the way, this is a big problem in Latin America, where people have land claims going back to the Spanish crown. And if someone invests, someone comes along and says, no, 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 the Spanish government gave this to me, my family, 400 years ago. So how well the courts work is very important. How big is the government? How high is the tax burden? How healthy is the government physically, financially? How about regulation? Do we have an effective market? Do we have an efficient market in labor and in finance? And do we have the freedom to trade, the freedom to invest, and so on? Well, what they found is that if you rank every country on earth by these scores, what do you find? Well, who's at the bottom? Well, all the usual suspects are at the bottom. Syria, Yemen, North Korea, and most countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Right, they're at the bottom. Those people don't eat as well, they don't have access to the same medical care, and they live shorter lives. The countries at the top in these rankings are the countries of Western Europe, the United States, Canada, Singapore, etc., New Zealand, Australia, and so on. And that is, so we can see definitively that where these ideas are put into action, people live better. And where they're not, people live worse. This is not even subject to debate because you can empirically see it around the world. To put another way, if you take a country with one language, one history, one culture, divide it in half. One side goes one way, one side goes the other, come back in 50 years and see what happens. And this, by the way, has only happened twice in all of human history. It's only happened 2 times. It happened in Germany and in Korea. And everyone knows that when the Berlin Wall fell, there was no one in West Germany who said, thank God I can go shop in East Berlin. No one is trying to break into North Korea. Nobody wants to go to North Korea. People want to go to South Korea. Why? Because the ideas that bring us together are put into action in West Germany and in South Korea, where they were not in East Germany and in North Korea. Next. There are talented, smart people all around the world. This is one of my favorite quotes. Talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. Opportunity is something that we have to guarantee, or that we have to move forward in creating that opportunity so that why? So that you have the innovation that allows people to live better. So next. So what allows people to prosper? What allows one country to become wealthy and another country is held back? It's these ideas. They're on the screen right here. We don't have to figure this out. We don't have to discover this. We don't have to research it because it's clear. It's empirically clear around the world. Good schools, property rights, low and fair taxes, trade, sound money, effective courts, the freedom to work, save, and invest, the freedom to create a business, sound government, freedom from corruption. These are the ideas that help people to prosper. But there's one thing that these ideas cannot do. There's one thing that it would be great if they could do it, but they can't. And that is, they can't implement themselves. They require champions. They require you to put them into action, because the history of the world actually shows the opposite. If you take a look at the history of all of humankind, the tendency is for power to move away from people and to a ruling class. Now, that may be a monarchy, or that may be a communist party, or that may be just the government, but the tendency is for power to move away and for opportunity to be limited or restricted or controlled by the government. And so this is why we have to be active in politics, because these ideas don't implement themselves. And that brings me to the most important question in politics. What is the most important question in politics? And it's not what this teaches us. This teaches us that who is the most important question, because social media is all about who. It's all about personalities. Kim Kardashian will have more Instagram followers than me forever, as wrong as that may be, because social media is driven by personality. But that's not the most important question in politics. The most important question in politics is, next, is why. The most important question that you must answer being involved in politics is why. Next screen. Why should someone believe you? Why are your ideas better? Why is your candidate running for office? Why does your party exist? Why should I trust you? The why questions are the most important questions in politics. And so you must have an answer to that. And you have to answer the question before it's asked. You have to answer the question before it's asked. Why are we involved? I know why I'm involved. Why I'm involved is that I know that the ideas that brought us to the room today, that brought us to this hotel today, help people to live better. Not just me, but to help everyone to live better. And that's why, and people want to know, why are you involved? Are you just involved to help your friends get rich? Are you just involved in order for you to have some elected office? Or are you involved for a greater reason, a reason that goes beyond your self-interest? The most important question in politics is why. Next. Next. So who could be a conservative? Who can be part of your party or your movement? And there's only one answer to that. And that answer is anyone. Because what brings us together is not a race, an ethnicity, a national language, a national origin. That's not what brings us together. What brings us together is a set of ideas which, when they're put into action, help people to live better. So let me go on to this point. In politics, which side gets to win? Because we want to be on the winning side. We want to be on the winning side so that we can put ideas into action to help people live better. So which side gets to win? That's an important question. Which side gets to win? Next. Well, some people might say that it's all about money, which side has more money, that's the side that wins in politics. Well, money is important, but it's not the determining factor. In fact, I want to introduce you to this man. This man is named Michael Bloomberg, and he's a very wealthy man. He's a billionaire many times over, and he ran for president of the United States in 2020, and you may not have ever heard of him because he got crushed. He spent more money than anyone has ever spent running for president, and he got crushed everywhere. In fact, the only place he won is a little place called American Samoa, which none of us could find on the map. Little island in the Pacific. It's an American territory. It's the only place he won running for president. He was defeated by Joe Biden, who spent a lot less money. Next. These two candidates ran for governor of California in 2010. I used to be leader of the Republican Party in the state of California. These two people ran for governor in the year I was chairman. And Jerry Brown spent $36 million, and he beat Meg Whitman, who spent $177 million. So money alone does not determine the winner in politics. Just because your side does not have as much money does not mean that the other side is guaranteed to win. Money is a factor. You need to have enough money to get your message across, but that alone doesn't determine the winner in politics. Next. Well, maybe it's the news media, the reporters and the owners of the television and the newspaper and so on. Well, maybe they decide who wins? Well, to that I would direct you to these two people. Right? These were our two candidates for President of the United States in 2016. Just about every reporter I know probably voted for Hillary Clinton, and yet Donald Trump won. The media itself, it's helpful when the media is on your side, but they don't have to be. When Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980, there wasn't anyone in the media on his side, and yet he won. We have so many examples of people who've won office despite what people in the media might think. So I wouldn't worry about the media too much because they don't get to decide who wins either. Next. Well, maybe it's the size of the political party. The bigger the political party, maybe they get to win. The party that has more members, maybe that's the key. Well, to that I want to introduce you to the People's Democratic Republic of Massachusetts. Take a look at these numbers. These are from 2014. In the state of Massachusetts, which is very liberal, for every one Republican who has no friends at parties and no one will talk to, he's outnumbered by 3 Democrats. So 3-to-1 Democrats to Republicans in the state of Massachusetts. And yet, who is the governor today? These are the results of the 2014 election for governor of Massachusetts. You can see the Republican beat the Democrat by 40,000 votes, even though his party is outnumbered by 3-to-1. You don't have to be the biggest party in order to win. Next. Well, maybe it's the side with the best ideas. Well, this is appealing. Our ideas are better. We should win. To which I'd like to introduce you to this guy. Right? Hugo Chavez. He was the president of Venezuela. He was elected the first time. He became a dictator over time. And this guy's ideas are so bad that Venezuela, which is the Saudi Arabia of South America, Venezuela has more oil than any country in South America. He has made this country so poor that mothers cannot buy diapers for their children in Caracas today. That's how poor his ideas have made the country. So just because you have better ideas, that doesn't guarantee that you win either. So who does get to win? Well, if you take a look at history as a series of movements instead of a series of elections, what you find is that the winner of a political contest over time is determined by the number and the effectiveness of the activists and leaders on each side. And that's why we're here, to increase your number and your effectiveness. Because over time, that is what determines who wins in politics. The winner of a political contest over time is determined by the number and the effectiveness of the activists and leaders on each side. Let me tell you a story about these two men. On the left is Barry Goldwater. He ran for president of the United States in 1964. And on the right is Ronald Reagan, who ran for president 16 years later. Philosophically, the two men are identical. There's no real difference on ideas between these two men. Yes, there are other differences, but when Barry Goldwater ran, he lost 44 out of 50 states. And that takes talent. It's pretty easy to win at least 6 states. If any of us ran for president, we would win at least 6 states, okay? Ronald Reagan ran for president, he won 44 states. So what is the difference? What happened between these two dates? What happened between 1964 and 1980 that allowed Reagan to win in a landslide, whereas Barry Goldwater lost? And what happened is that between 1964 and 1980, there were hundreds of thousands of people who had gotten involved in politics because of Barry Goldwater, and they remained involved in politics, and they learned how to effectively organize and communicate. They founded think tanks like the Heritage Foundation. They founded a group of conservative lawmakers at the state level. That was founded in 1973. They rallied around a magazine called National Review, which greatly expanded its circulation in the 1960s. They founded organizations like Gun Owners of America for people to protect their right to have a firearm. The Leadership Institute, which I work for, was founded in 1979. And all of these different organizations were founded or started or expanded, and the people in them learned how to do two things. They learned how to organize and communicate, and they learned how to work together. And So these people who were involved, who got involved, remain involved next, and they learn how to do two things, how to organize and to communicate, and that is what you must learn. It's not enough to get the philosophy right, but you have to learn how to organize and communicate, and to do so at scale better than your opponents. And that over time will help you to win. And these skills, next, work for either side. They work for your side, they work for the opponents. The ability to organize and to communicate. So let me give you an example about how that works. If you take a look at this is a fake political sign. If you take a look at a sign like this, well, I would never develop a political sign like this for a couple of different reasons. One is it's black text on a white background, which is more difficult to read. There are too many words on the sign. It's not really clear, if you just have a second to look at it, what the sign is trying to say. Whereas if you compare that, next, this is my sign when I ran for office in 2020, which I won. Name, office. What are the differences between this sign and the previous one? Well, it's very clear as to what the sign is supposed to convey. It's white text on a light-colored background. It's light-colored text on a dark background. Green and blue are the most effective colors in advertising for purposes like this. So it's the name and the office. It's a little difference, but it has a big impact on the outcome. Let me give you another example. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger's biography. Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of California when I was the leader of the party. This is his biography, and next, this is the same document. Which one is more readable? This one, go back, or that one? This one? No, right? Next one, right. So what is the difference? Well, the content is the same, but the presentation is different. Here you have, it's all jumbled up together, it's all capital letters and so on. Next, here we have the paragraphs are broken up, white text on a dark background, and the font is more readable. Again, the content is the same, but the presentation makes all the difference. Next. This is a chart that you commonly see in political science class. And anyone who's taken a political science 101 type of class has seen a chart like this, which suggests, well, in any population, you have more people who are politically moderate, and as you go out to the extremes, you have fewer and fewer people. And what's implied by this is, well, whichever candidate is closest to the center is going to have an advantage in the election. The only problem with this is that it doesn't really work. And what I mean by that, next, is that all of these people that you see up on the screen includes Chris Christie was the governor of New Jersey, Kevin Faulconer was the mayor of San Diego, Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, Susana Martinez was the governor of New Mexico, Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City. All of these candidates won in areas where their opponent was closer. Go back one slide. All of those candidates won even though they were further from the center than their opponent was. And so it begs the question, well, how were they able to win? How were these candidates able to win when philosophically they were further away from their opponents and further away from where the voters were? Next. The answer to that is that candidates and leaders don't only exist in one dimension, that is a political spectrum, left, right, center. This is an oversimplified version of reality, and it's so oversimplified it doesn't really work, because candidates and leaders have to exist in three dimensions, not only one. If you plan to be a candidate, or you want to work for a candidate, or work for a leader or a movement leader, etc., they have to be strong in three areas, not only one. The first area is their ideas, their philosophy. Of course, that's important. But it's not the only area where they have to be strong. But it is an important one, and that is that candidates must be seen as a solution to a problem. If candidates are seen as only about their ideology instead of solving people's problems, then they're at a disadvantage. But the candidate has to be the solution to a problem and offer solutions to problems. That's what ideas have to be about. But in addition to that, is a candidate's story or a leader's story. You can have candidates who have great ideas, but they have a terrible story. And we need candidates who will be strong in 3 areas. They have to be strong in terms of their ideas. They have to be strong in terms of what they have done in their life. Have they accomplished anything? Have they been arrested? Are they a criminal? Are they honest? Have they accomplished something, etc.? That's their story, what we call their narrative. And the third is their skill. We have plenty of people who have run for office and they have great ideas, they have a great story, but they don't know how to organize a campaign, or they don't know how to raise money, or they don't know how to go on television, or they don't know how to hold a rally, or they don't know how to organize volunteers, etc. So what makes a leader strong is that they're strong in these 3 areas: philosophy, their narrative, and their skill. So let me wrap it up with this. Next. The most important question in politics is why. Why should people vote for your party instead of another party? Why should people trust you when we don't trust politicians anyway? Why is your party the better alternative? What solution is your party, what problem is your party working to solve? And does that relate to regular people? Next, we know that the ideas that bring us to the table produce prosperity, but they can't implement themselves. They need champions, they need you, they need candidates from our party to put those ideas into action. Why? To benefit other people. Conservatism is a set of ideas that's open to everybody. It doesn't matter whether you were born in Croatia, whether you were born in Bosnia, it doesn't matter where you were born, that if you share our ideas in some way, then you're welcome onto the team. It doesn't matter what your native language is or where you were born, whatever. Next. The winner of a political contest over time is determined by the number and the effectiveness of the activists and leaders on each side. So what must we do? Number 1, increase our number. So the next time this conference is held, it should have twice as many people. And the time after that, it should have, again, twice as many people. We want to grow in terms of the number of people and to also grow their effectiveness, which is why doing a program like this is helpful because it makes you more effective. Political technology is the skills to organize and to communicate. That's what we're talking a little bit about today. And then finally, the right skills, the right narrative, and the right philosophy together is what helps a person to be successful in politics. That is a quick top-level summary of some of the things we're going to talk about today. And if we have questions, I'm happy to take some questions. Otherwise, we'll go on to Rick's presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions. And Stephen, if you have one, I'll start with you. But if not, then we'll move on.
I think what Ron is saying has universal application. So it's not just the case that this applies to American politics. These questions and considerations, how to approach a campaign, how to successfully, effectively communicate with average voters, how to broaden your appeal, to bring in new voters into your camp. These are questions that are relevant for every country, including Croatia. That's why I believe it is necessary to have these kinds of workshops with this kind of expertise coming from abroad here in Croatia, because we can change the way people understand politics. It's my own experience, actually. I never thought I would be involved in politics. I was very happy being a university professor, working with my students, and it's still actually a great love of my life. But I did enter politics, and I have now experience from a campaign, and I can assure you that what Ron is communicating to us today is actually the case. We have to think these things through well before a campaign in order to succeed. And it's not all about money. It's not all about money. We should take also seriously the fact that lots of voters are undecided. We can persuade voters. There's a huge opportunity in Croatia. People want to live in a country that is managed properly. They don't want to simply pull up their hands and accept corruption or abuse of power. So My question would be really more, I would be personally interested if you could share maybe an anecdote or two from your own experience. You're running a national campaign. I know the media environment in the United States is very hostile to candidates coming from the right, usually. So what are some things that you can recall that stuck in your mind as perhaps mistakes that could have been avoided, or opportunities that were really used very well on behalf of a candidate, maybe Ted Cruz, or maybe you can mention another case. Thank you.
Yeah. So one example that comes to mind is me. And that is that I've been on the ballot several times before. I ran for a local government office in 2020. I did not hold the office. I ran against two people of my own party. And this is for a very local office. Only 8,000 people get to vote for this office. And it's in my part of the county of San Diego. And I was not the incumbent. I was a challenger candidate. I ran against two people of my own party, and I beat them both. 66% of the voters voted for me, and the remainder voted for the other two candidates. And this is even though the vast majority of people in my neighborhood, my area, my constituency, did not know who I was. So how did I beat two people from my own party running for this local office? I ran a better campaign than they did. They ran almost no campaign whatsoever, a little bit. And I just ran a campaign that goes according to what we teach at the Leadership Institute, and I crushed them both. Now, I still work with one of them because it was an election where you vote for two candidates, and so two of us were going to win. There were three candidates for two offices. But I ran as the challenger candidate, and I beat them because I ran a better campaign. And partly because I teach for the Leadership Institute how to run campaigns. But just because you're not in power doesn't mean you can't attain power. The key is that candidates need to be seen as the solution to a problem. And we have to define what are our values, what is the problem we're trying to solve, what is our proposal, how are we a solution to that problem. And too often candidates get caught up in all these other things, right? They get caught up just in slogans and nonsense. And they talk like politicians instead of talking like normal people who are trying to solve the problems that other people are having. And so no one should think that, oh, well, there's just an elite out there and they're the ones who are entitled to be in power, be in authority. No, if you run a better campaign, you connect with voters better, you offer a solution to challenges that people are facing, you will be a competitive candidate going forward. The second element that I would recommend is that no one should be involved in running a campaign until they have taken the time to learn the skills into how to run a campaign. It's very competitive out there. To file to become a candidate for office against someone who's already in office is an aggressive thing to do. There are schools that you can attend. We offer them online. We'll be happy to come here and run one to learn the skills in order to do that. So those would be the two things that come to mind right away. But no one should think that, oh, political power is beyond my ability to reach it. If you want to be a candidate or support a candidate, you can put a competitive campaign together if you follow the right techniques to do so. That would be my answer to your question. Thanks, Stephen.
The floor is open for questions.
Okay, then I'll turn it over to Rick. Rick is going to talk a little bit about communicating in a political campaign. Rick is my colleague at the Leadership Institute. Rick runs our most prestigious program called the Campaign Leadership College. It's a 9-day program that we run in Washington several times a year on how to design, run, and implement a successful campaign for office. If you're in America, you'll frequently find Rick on television on the network MSNBC, where he frequently is explaining politics. And so would you please welcome to the podium my good friend Rick Tucker.